This week's episode is a freaking hat trick, okay? Not only do I physically actually have something that I can show off and use as the example, not only does it tie into last week's episode and build on the discussion that we had there, rewarding you guys who are coming back, but it also discusses my absolute favorite topic to cover in any of these rants, which is interactive art theory, game design, for a triple awesome episode. Triply awesome, triple the fun, triply awesome with triple mint gum. I don't know why I'm making references to ads. Start the rant already.
So, who here has heard of the movie Pixels? You know, that film where aliens attack us with video game characters? And despite Adam Sandler's involvement, it's looking to be a decent flick. And maybe not classic or even exceptional, really, but something that's big, fun, and enjoyable to watch during the summer months. Which is weird considering the history this industry has with translating into other formats. And the examples of failed video game movies are too numerous to count, and if I propose something like a Call of Duty novel series, I'm pretty sure all of you would laugh hysterically at me. We'd like to think putting the original creators themselves in charge of the translation would make things better, but interestingly enough, most video game cutscenes actually break cardinal rules of film design to begin with, so it seems that even we don't know how to do this correctly. Why? I talked last week about the importance of mechanics and how they're just as powerful of narrative tools as any text box or pre-rendered CG, but this week I want to take that in the opposite direction. If we were to turn a video game into something else, what would be the best way to go about it? Is there a general theory to this we could follow, and what pitfalls would you have to actively try to avoid? While the nitty-gritty of a lot of those questions would fall on a case-by-case basis, something came to me in the mail last week that I think gives us a pretty good benchmark to aspire to. This is Super Dungeon Explore, and it is a video game board game. Again, some of you are probably laughing. Why not just make a real video game, you might ask? Why bother with the cardboard, plastic, and complicated rules when you can have polygons, pixels, and a computer do all the calculations for you? Simple. Sodapop Miniatures understands the core appeal of their product. As an artist, you always have to ask yourself something. What makes my work special? What does it bring to the table that no one else does? Why would people choose to give me money as opposed to every other option they have? The sooner you figure this out, the better a time you'll have building a good product, because it not only makes marketing a hell of a lot easier, but it also focuses your efforts creatively, and serves as a constant reminder of what you're trying to achieve in every aspect of the piece. I think a lot of video game movies fell short because they failed to understand why the audience for that game gravitated to it in the first place. Take Silent Hill Revelation 3D as an example. Any horror buff will tell you that despite the grotesque imagery and horrific monsters roaming about, Silent Hill's greatest appeal is the way it spooks you psychologically. The fog is obscuring and claustrophobic. It makes every step forward feel like an uncertain proposition, and even paths you've walked before become dangerous because of this limited sense of scope. There are other humans here, but they certainly don't feel like people. They all have a very Twin Peaks-esque demeanor, being twisted in such a way that an encounter with one of them is almost more unsettling than the abominations trying to nibble your fingers off. You truly feel alone in a Silent Hill game, which is great because that kind of personal time only gives you one direction to look: inwards. It allows you the kind of reflection necessary to examine what all this means for the character and why this kind of thing is happening to them specifically. This is exactly what the developers wanted, and they left plenty of rewards for any person willing to take that mental journey. This is The Shadow, an exploration of that uncomfortable place between what we believe ourselves to be and what we really are. A method of creating the kind of horror that creeps out from the game world and into yours, making you look twice at the people you interact with day to day and pause before you turn off the lights at night. Silent Hill Revelation 3D did not do this. Gone is the sense of uncanny, lingering horror, and swapped in is a gory, bland, and completely forgettable world that only thinks it's scary because blood, more blood, and boo, a monster. Then look at something like Super Dungeon Explore. When you think of tabletop RPGs, Yep, there you go. That is the first thing that comes to mind, isn't it? And indeed, most people who devote themselves to a more physical experience are looking for that kind of deep, involved play that justifies the insane prices good board games go for these days. This is why Super Dungeon Explorer is a strategy RPG, and why it's steeped in such a heavy fantasy theme. That's simply the image most of us associate with role-playing. For crying out loud, this is a board game with lore. An entire booklet comes with the box explaining the backstory, concepts, and characters that make the setting. But it also takes things a step further by incorporating a chibi, anime-style aesthetic. You'd think this would compromise on what they're going for, but in reality, it allows them to make the world even more colorful, fanciful, and alive than it would have been otherwise, as well as appealing to an interest most people who like video games also share. And speaking of appealing to more people, Super Dungeon Explorer is full of very complex and interesting systems that all play off each other in creative ways. But if you don't feel like memorizing the whole rulebook before you can play, don't worry about it. Every character card has reminders on the back explaining what their abilities do and what it means for play if you use them. There are even cards you can keep on hand to serve as reminders for what certain tiles do if you step on them, or how much anger you draw from the monsters for performing certain actions. There's even a set of quick start instructions included that serves as a tutorial for new players, allowing you to get the basic idea of the game and work out the deeper details as you play real matches. It's involved, deep, and clever enough to appeal to hardcore players, while also being approachable, cute, and colorful enough to feel like anyone can pick it up and play in minutes. And all of this is wrapped in a video game theme that would draw all of those people to it naturally. Now, to be fair, SDE does have an advantage by being a type of game, but the same principles apply. If we're going to bring video game concepts to another medium, we need to understand what virtues that game succeeded by in the first place, and how to best capitalize that in something that lacks a game's normal means of doing so. But on that note, there's one other thing I feel like I need to address. Every time I see the question asked of how do we turn this game into a movie, there's almost a finality to it. An attitude like we have to do this someday. To which I disagree. Not all games have to be turned into movies, nor should they be. Bowser works as a villain because of how he functions mechanically. His purpose is to give the journey meaning and provide a boss fight at the end. That's it. And it works. Time after time it works. His job is not to be a clever foil to Mario, nor make the player question his motivations and goals when he learns the ones behind the villain. In the words of Satchbag, nobody claims that the Mario series made them feel something. And I assure you that if it did, those feels were not invoked by the narrative. Mechanics are a game's greatest strength, or at least they should be, so in most cases, unless you think there's something you can only do with a movie that you can't do in your game, I think it's pretty safe to leave well enough alone. And if you do feel that way, well, refer to my last episode for the reasons why that's a misguided thought process in the first place.
Alright, so you're gonna attack the duck?
Yeah.
Alright, so go ahead and roll. You need at least 2 stars. That's okay. You get 2 more. Alright, yeah, so the duck is dead. I regret nothing! Alright, so you got 1 move left, so if you move your princess forward a little bit... What?